understanding, you don't like their east side plan. You don't feel it's attractive enough for the Riverwalk. So how much of this $175 million are you actually going to spend to go above and beyond what the Corps of Engineers wants to make the downtown side look pretty? I think that should be done by the business taxes downtown, which, if I remember correctly, I believe you incorporated the west side of the river going up to the interstate when you put that group in that, I think about 2 years ago when they got clumped into that, they have to pay the downtown business tax. The other question I'm curious of is, I still firmly believe that we have one of the most senior states in the United States with our Senator Grassley and Senator Harkin. And they're still telling us that they're fairly confident that they're going to come up with some additional funding. If they do come up with that additional funding, what do you plan on doing? Say that if they come up with $50 million with our money, is it going to go into the general fund for you to do as you please with?
Well, the first question, Dan, as far as the Corps recommended, I want everybody to understand that just because the Corps has recommended partial protection of the east side, it's not a done deal. The Corps doesn't appropriate money. They only spend the money that Congress appropriates to them. So although we received their support at the Civil Works Review Committee last fall in the Chief's report, that just makes it eligible now for them, the congressional budgets and committees to allocate from that standpoint. The Corps' formula is 65-35. That's standard around the country. It doesn't matter what community you're from. Their plan only started at Quaker Oats. We would prefer to go north of Quaker Oats to include protecting Cedar Lake and that lower Daniels Park area. Their plan also only calls for a solid wall, and these two gentlemen articulated very well what a solid wall would do to a community. We would put removable walls in place for the section going through basically the downtown.
What I want to know is nobody's actually said yet, you're basically saying we're going to kind of give up a little bit of this money because it doesn't look pretty. I'm not one that's too worried about pretty. I'm worried more about functionality. I'll take a car that has a rusty door that has a good engine versus it's beautiful but it doesn't have an engine.
Well,
how much are we going to take and spend of this lost money to make downtown prettier instead of functional?
It isn't about making downtown prettier. It's about
removable walls are prettier.
It's about using flood management techniques. Part of it's a levee. You're already seeing part of it right now started by Quaker. Part of it is some permanent walls, and part of it is removable walls. Right now, Dan, under the scenario that's in front of us, we're proposing 50% of the local option sales tax over the 20 years. State money, under the best case scenario, if Congress actually supports what the Corps is recommending, we'll only get about $65 million from the federal government. That means out of a $375 million project, the state and local have to come up with the difference. The property values in the downtown area are on a decline. I know some people may not appreciate what that means. If you have a business that's valued at $100,000, it's taxed at $100,000. You have a house that's valued at $100,000, it's taxed at $48,000. So the business has paid twice as much tax as the homeowner. As the valuations were decreased in the downtown, that puts a huge pinch on the city's budget, and it really almost forces the burden someplace else. So it's to everyone's benefit to have a strong and vibrant economy, and these are the people that are producing the jobs that we all want people to work at.
And I appreciate that, but the thing I still want to know is how much of that money are you wanting to spend to do the removable and prettifications of the downtown of the lost money? I mean, it's simple. Is it 500 grand is a drop in the bucket, or are we talking about it's 25 million?
Yeah. No,
I want to know what that is before I'll vote yes. That's the thing that I want to know. That would be a stopper for me, because I feel the downtown district has a tax in place. In order to do it, they should pay for it. I really need to know how much that money you're turning away from what you're getting from the Corps of Engineers to do additional modifications because you want it to look prettier. And the other thing is what about, again, if Mr. Hargan and Mr. Grassley come up with the additional funding, what are you planning to do with the additional money? Put it in the general fund and do as you please with, or what are you going to do with it? That's what I want to know.
First of all, if Senator Grassley and Senator Hargan are successful in getting us more than just the $65 million, and it's towards the project or for some piece of the project, that would lower the state and city commitment.
Right. So are we going to take that additional money that we have and put it in the general fund or put it towards the roads? Because I want assurance from you in the ballot language that money doesn't go in the general fund for you guys to do what you want with. It actually has to go into the road fund so you fix the roads.
Right. That's a good question. And basically, you're saying that if we're successful at the federal level, beyond our current expectations, what would we do? Well, we could come back to the voters then, just as we're doing on May 3rd, we could come back to the voters and say, we hit a home run at the federal level. We got West Side support from the federal government. Instead of 50% towards flood protection, we only need 40% or 35%. We could go back to the voters and ask them to reallocate what we don't need for flood protection towards roads, or we could ask them to cut a year or two off of the 20 years.
But is there any way to put that? See, you may say that you would be willing to do that, but I don't know who's going to be the mayor in 6 years.
Dan, I don't know.
So what I want to know is there any way to put it in the ballot language that if we do hit a home run, as you say, from the federal government, and we have an additional $25 million, is that going to go towards roads, or are you just going to throw it in the general fund and spend it as you please?
We're saying the same thing back and forth. I understand your question, and that's the best I can answer. If we're successful at getting more than the $65 million, that would lower the state and local share.
Okay, so is it going to go to general fund or roads?
Dan, it's going to go to flood protection. 50% is going to flood protection. If we don't need all of it for flood protection, we would have to go back to the voters and ask them if they want to reallocate it to roads. And we're locked in to putting it towards flood protection unless you and the rest of the voters change that percentage.
I want to give just so everybody is clear on Dan's question, if we get a magical windfall from the federal government, and we don't really need this local option sales tax, because of law, they can't spend it free willy-nilly. That's law. They have to ask you how to spend it.
Beth,
okay, I want to give the nose an opportunity to respond to that.
I want to add one thing to that.
Throw her out.
No.
Supervisor Langston, I want to get the nose. I have to allow the nose to respond because the rules. I was very honest.
I share a piece of information if the gentleman would like it.
I would like the nose to respond, and also remember, past this time, you can go back and read the online conversations, as well as send emails and questions to the people that are involved in the panel and the people that are speaking from the crowd. Right.
All right, Dan, I can't directly answer your question, because obviously I can't say, what they're going to do with the money when they get it. What I can tell you is that it's not correct that they have to go back to the city council and ask. It is not correct that they have to redo the ballot language and are tied to that. The local option sales tax that you guys used to vote for 5 years ago is not the same local option sales tax it is today. There were provisions made and changed after the 2008 floods, the 423B1 and 42310B, that allow cities to now use any other extra money from local option sales tax funds that are not used for urban renewal projects without a vote from the citizens. Meaning at the point where they receive money from the Senate, and then they also get money out of us from local option sales tax for the same thing, they may be required to use the Senate money for what the Senate gave them to it for, but now our local option sales tax will be available for them to do any single thing they want with it for the next 20 years.
That's right.
He said the word urban renewal project. That was a piece of legislation that Davenport asked the legislature to do a couple years ago. this isn't an urban renewal project. You know it's not an urban renewal project. And so
But
therefore,
I'm
your
not talking about
statement,
this project, I'm talking about extra money. If you've got extra money,
you're
you can
bringing
do
up
what
a
you want with it.
document, you're bringing up a document referencing a law change, and you specifically said urban renewal, and you are correct. The legislature did allow Davenport and others that have it for urban renewals to make those changes without a vote of the people. But this isn't an urban renewal project.
The question was about extra money, not the money for this project. The question was, if there is extra money on top of the project price that you've got already, what would you do with the extra money? Well, the extra money can be used for any urban renewal project that you see fit, whether that's a civic center, a fire station, a library, a recreation center, you name it. Urban renewal project, it pretty much allows you to do any urban renewal that you see fit. That could include grass, planting trees, putting in a sidewalk, you name it.
So I'm unclear, honestly, at this point. That document you just read is from a Davenport decision, but it was a state legislature ruling, meaning going forward. I mean, I think people want to know for sure.
It allows communities with a local option sales tax to now use any extra funds over the top of what they solicit the funds for originally in any way they want. And from what we've seen in the past, this study has a tendency to take that money and put it into what they call, what is it? The Community Improvement Project, the CIP. I mean, I get that thing a lot.
So for the uses, is there a guarantee that although state law looks like it has this option to divert the funds in this way, that will not happen?
Under the scenario that he's talking about, it's for an urban renewal project. The ballot language locks the community in 50% for flood protection, 40% for existing streets, and 10% for property stabilization. That's what the ballot language says. Today, we don't have any money for flood protection, zero. And we're trying to put together a three-legged stool. So we need the local match. We looked at property tax and raising it. We didn't think that was the way to go. We looked at utility tax. We didn't think that was the way to go. So we're proposing a sales tax extension to help meet that local match.
I want to get, sorry, I have to let someone else, I'm so sorry, I have this really nice woman behind you who wants to ask a question, so I'm going to let her have an opportunity at the microphone.